number 4. So those of you who think that this is a game, like playing chess and maneuvering around and trying to get all the things in the right place, this past week, a drag queen who had been invited into the public schools to teach kids about how to be a drag queen and how to cross-dress, that's what your tax dollars are going for, tweeted out, they think they can keep their children from us. I hope you're alarmed. I hope you're angry. I hope you're upset. Because if you're not, your head's in the sand. Okay, bonus Sunday. By the way, if you have any disagreement with what I'm saying, we have this great office right down the street, about a half a mile from here. On the right, as you're going out, we'd love for you to come by and sit down with me and let's chat about some of these things. For some reason, this isn't working. Satan. So, here's the deal. When I was growing up, probably like many of you, I was brought up in the church. I was literally born in the church nursery from the very beginning. When a pastor would preach a sermon, many times, especially as a teenager, I would walk away going, that was really nice, but how does that connect to everything else? It doesn't make sense. How does this fit into the big picture of everything that's going on? Because that verse was really cool, but how does it fit with what was going on over here in this part of the Bible? Anybody else relate to that? Okay, it's just me. The reason when we go into a new book, like we're going into today and starting a new series, I spend a lot of time kind of setting the stage for you, is because I want you to understand how all this all fits together. I don't want to assume that every single one of you are on the same maturity level, knowledge level, those kinds of things. So the Bible, incredible book, was written over the course of 4,000 years, okay? Sometimes we get the idea, oh, this guy wrote it, and this guy came along and said, here, I'll add to it. No, what Moses wrote in the books of Genesis through Deuteronomy, what he wrote was written 4,000 years before John wrote the book of Revelation. And that's one of the reasons, just one of the many reasons why this book is such an amazing book, because what he started in Genesis 4,000 years ago, the same themes are carried all the way through the book without the ability for these guys to sit down in the same room and go, let's compare notes. So literally 4,000 years apart, dozens of different professions, shepherds, warriors, kings, prophets, fishermen, lawyers, doctors, all of these guys writing these books were in different stages, different places, and yet they came together with this incredible message, which is not really, truly, honestly, just one book. It's actually 66 books compiled together for us. There's the Old Testament and the New Testament, which literally means the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. And if you don't understand that, I'll explain it to you at some other point, but just the reality that there's two different covenants that have been in play between God and mankind all the way through time. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the setting for the book we're beginning today. If you start in Genesis, the first 5 books of the Bible are known as the Torah or the Law. For the Hebrew people, they recognized it as it's kind of the story of their patriarchs, where God first introduced himself to the people of Israel, where he introduced the covenant idea to Abraham, and he said to him, through you, through your lineage, through your family, you will be a blessing to the whole world, and that's how the world's going to get to know me, because of you. It also was, of course, the law. We commonly know it as the 10 Commandments, but it also expanded into many other areas. It became 670-something commandments before it was all over with, based on what the Sadducees and the Pharisees did with it. But still, it was good guidance for life. You skip next to the next section of it, and all these different genres that are going on in the Bible, the next several books are all kind of biographical, historical kind of stuff. Ezra, Esther, Nehemiah, the Kings, the Chronicles. They record the history of Israel and all the things that God did in introducing himself to Israel, protecting Israel, providing for Israel. Well, then you skip over the next section. We're coming back to it. You get to the end of the book and you have the prophets, the major and minor prophets. Anybody know why they're called major and minor? See, I am teaching you something new today. Or either that or you just don't want to talk. Major and minor prophets. The major prophets were just bigger books. Okay? So Jeremiah is not any more important than Nahum and Obadiah. It's just that it's a bigger book. So major prophets, minor prophets. The portion I skipped over is what we're going to be spending some time in this next few weeks. It is wisdom literature. Wisdom literature, okay? God, how we need some wisdom, right? Okay? Wisdom literature was very important in that day and age and in that time. It would be comparable to modern day philosophy, if you will. But what wisdom literature does is it takes a look at life, how life operates, how things go, how things work, okay? The 5 books that make up wisdom literature are Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs, or some books still call it Song of Solomon, just depending on which translation you're using. Let me tell you a little bit about all of them. I'll skip Job. I'm going to come back to it, and you'll understand why in a minute. Psalms. Psalms, really great book. In fact, if you've got posters, magnets, bumper stickers, cross-stitch on your refrigerator or whatever, there's probably a good chance you've got Psalms somewhere in your house, right? We love the Psalms for a lot of different reasons. One of the most popular passages of Scripture that even the world knows a lot about is Psalm 23, which is the shepherd's psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. Psalms is kind of schizophrenic. You ever thought about that? It's not all David. David wrote some of it. Asaph wrote some of it. The sons of Korah wrote portions of it. But in it, you'll read it, and it's kind of interesting. Like 1 minute, David is going, "Oh my God, why have you forsaken me?" And literally 2 verses later, he's going, "Oh my God, who's always constant and near." And you're going, okay, now which one is he? Is he, you know? And so you kind of wonder if David's emotions were kind of like this sometimes. But still, obviously, a very good book. Then you get into Proverbs. Proverbs were a bunch of little cute, little pithy little sayings that were full of wisdom, but hear me clearly. You do not read Proverbs as rules, you read them as general guidelines. What do I mean by that? Well, there's one particular verse that my dad adhered to very much out of Proverbs. It is this: "Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction will drive it far from him." Okay? Now, he believed in that one very firmly, and it worked for the most part with me, but it's not a guarantee. See what I'm saying? There's no guarantee that if he did correct me with punishment, that I always would behave. It's just a general rule of thumb that says there is a cause, there is a result, and most of the time this is the way it's going to unfold. And there are positive examples as well as negative examples. If you don't do this, then this will happen. One of my favorites is, "It is better to live on the corner of a roof than to live with a nagging wife." Not because I experienced that at all. I live clearly in the center of my... I'm sorry. So that's Proverbs. Anybody want to invite me to lunch today? All right, so after Proverbs, we'll skip Ecclesiastes, we're going to get to Song of Songs. Woo, Song of Solomon. Woo, that's good stuff. And a lot of people go, why in the world is this in the Bible? I mean, it's very romantic literature written by a guy who's talking about his lover and how much he loves her and how beautiful she is. It's this ongoing dialogue and all this kind of stuff. And while there are some allegorical parts that reference the relationship to God, most of it's this very intimate, sensual kind of stuff. Your teeth are like 2 goats coming down from the water. Try that with your wife tonight. But seriously, that's the kind of comparison is. You know, each one is perfect in its shape. Well, basically, you're saying, you got good teeth, baby. So that's 3 of the 5. All right, so let's go back to Job. Job and Ecclesiastes, the book that we're going to be studying this next few weeks, come at the world from 2 different points of view. Let me kind of give you the quick background on the book of Job so you can understand what I'm talking about. Most of you kind of know it a little bit, but the Bible records that at some point, Satan comes with the sons of man to appear before God, and he comes to God to ask permission to do something. Stop right there, sermon number 5. This is a little side sermon. Satan has to ask permission to get near you. Okay? Satan has to ask God, can I touch him or her? If you want further verification of that, go to the New Testament where Jesus, near the end of his life, is talking to Peter, and he says, Satan has asked for permission to sift you. Why is that in a different sermon? Because I want you to hear something. I don't care what you are up against. I don't care what challenge you have. God has it. And he did not give it to you without a purpose. Satan came and said, can I touch Ridley with this? And God said, I think it's a good idea. I think he needs a little correction. I think he needs a little challenge. I think he needs a little testing. I think he needs a little growing in his faith. But nothing in the world touches you unless God says yes. Okay? So, why am I sharing that sermon with you? Because it is extremely important that you worship on a weekly basis. Why? Because worship is exalting God to the rightful place so that everything you go through in life is put in its rightful place. That challenge you face next week diminishes in its importance when you realize how powerful your God is. When you come in week after week and you sing 10,000 reasons for our soul to sing, and then tomorrow you go to work and everything breaks loose in a chaotic way, you can go back to what happened on Sunday and go, you know what, God's with me. He's got this, and it didn't surprise him that it was going to happen. Remember that, because as we get into the story of Job, it's fixing to come back around. So, Satan says to him, hey, I've been walking around the earth. God goes, I know that. Hey, by the way, have you checked out my man Job? He's a good dude. He's solid. You don't know God said dude, did you? He says, he's a good dude. He's solid. Check him out. And Satan goes, well, of course he's good. You've blessed him. Who wouldn't be good if you blessed him? And God says, okay, well then test him. See what happens. Well, immediately what happens is, in the course of a short period of time, messenger after messenger after messenger shows up at Job's doorstep and says, your crops have been destroyed. Your sheep have been run off. Invaders from another land have come and killed all your servants. Your kids were all having lunch together and the roof caved in and all of them are dead. And go check me out on this and prove me wrong, but on verse 12 of chapter 1, it says that Job, the minute that last messenger came with the news that his children were dead, he stood up, he tore his clothes, and he began to worship. Remember what I told you about worship being important? He didn't cry, he didn't whine, he didn't complain, he didn't fuss, he didn't wring his hands, he didn't lose sleep. He worshiped. Why? Again, put God where he belongs, and everything else pales in comparison to it. And I'm not just talking about for an hour on Sunday. I'm talking about every single day of your life. You got to get up and worship the one who created you. Got to, because it puts it all in the right perspective. Now, I said that they come from two different perspectives. The rest of the book of Job is his wife and his friends coming to him and saying, oh, if only you had this, things would be better. If only you would do this, things would be better. If only, things would get better. We get to Ecclesiastes, you're going to hear an entirely different perspective, because in Ecclesiastes, King Solomon writes, and he says, it doesn't make any difference what you got, it doesn't get better. How's that for happy news today? Don't worry, it gets worse. He says, I've had it all. I've been the richest, the smartest, the most powerful, the best looking. I've got 700 wives, 300 concubines, which might be the place where he steered off course. I refer you back to Proverbs and the Nagging Wife. But Solomon looks up and he says, I've done it all. You name it, I've got it, I own it, I tried it, it's out back in my barn, and none of it satisfies me. None of it. So we're going to take a closer look at this book. It's an important book. A lot of scholars question it, whether or not it actually belongs in the Bible, and the reason they do is because they go, wait a minute, it doesn't fit any of the other Old Testament writing. It's not like anything else in the book. Why? Because it doesn't mention any of the patriarchs. It doesn't talk about Abraham, Moses, Noah, any of those guys. It doesn't talk about the history of Israel. And some of the verses in there kind of sound contradictory to the gospel. There's a place in there where he says, we're just like the animals. We live, we die, and it's done. Well, does that mean that Solomon doesn't believe in an afterlife? No. Here's a warning for you. And I've said this to you many times if you've been here before. Never, ever, 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 ever read a verse of Scripture out of the context in which it's written. Which means if you're going to read Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 8, you need to know what Ecclesiastes chapter 1 through chapter 12 say. Because as Paul Harvey used to say, you got to know the rest of the story. The beginning of this book is really, really, but when you get to the end, you go, that makes sense. So follow along with me. Usually I try to read the passage of Scripture. We come back and refer to some things. I'm going to kind of go through it as we go today and kind of pick it apart a little bit for you. I'm going to teach you a little bit of Hebrew today. I know you always love that. And we'll see what happens, okay? You're going to probably feel some of the themes in here. In fact, I would say every single one of us, regardless of where you are, how long you've been a believer, where you're sitting in your stage of life, every one of us have asked some of the questions that Solomon has asked. Meaning of life. Why do I work? What does it gain me? What about death? What about wisdom? You know, those kinds of things. It's going to stay this time. Okay. Much of what Solomon says kind of reminds me of Bill Murray's Groundhog Day. You ever seen that movie? I've never seen it, actually, to be honest with you. But my understanding is that basically Bill Murray wakes up every single day and relives the same day and over and over until eventually he gets it right. He figures out the answers to some things he's looking at. But there's this place in the movie where he has a love interest. I think her name is Rita. And he gets to this stage in their life, their relationship. I don't know what day in the story. But as they are talking, he looks into Rita's eyes and he says to her, I don't know what will happen tomorrow. All I know is I am happy right now. That's probably a good summation of what the world is doing. We're chasing after happiness at the cost of joy. We're pursuing all the temporary things that give us a flutter in our heart, but we're forgetting that our hearts were meant for eternity, not for the passing moment. And so that's kind of what Solomon's going to deal with here. Let's jump into it. Beginning with verse 1 of chapter 1, it says, the words of the teacher. Some translations read that as preacher. And it says, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Now, some scholars disagree on whether or not this is actually Solomon. I'm not sure why, because that seems pretty clear-cut to me. And quite honestly, some Bible scholars actually go out of their way to escape the obvious. I mean, it seems pretty obvious. At the very least, it's somebody who knew Solomon very, very well, who was writing what Solomon had told him somewhere along the way. But my thinking is that it's Solomon, he's writing, and he's probably near the end of his life because he's been king in Jerusalem for a very long time and he's experienced a lot of different things. So here's where you come into the beautiful Hebrew word. Now, you know when you say the H word in Hebrew, you have to go, right? People in the front, be prepared for what's about to come out of the back. The word is hevel. Can you say that? No. Oh, gosh. Oh. That was bad. Hevel. Hevel. Okay? The word literally means smoke or vapor, but translated, it means futile or meaningless. The idea is that when you grasp at smoke and look in your hand, it's gone. It's fleeting. It doesn't remain. And this is the word that is used here and is translated as, in this case, absolutely futile. In some translations, it's the word meaningless, hence the title of the sermon today. Absolute futility, says the teacher. Absolute futility. Everything is futile. At that point, we can close our books, go home, and be depressed the rest of the day, right? It says, what does a person gain for all his efforts that he labors at under the sun? So here's the question, the ultimate question. He's saying, you know what? Become adult in this world, what do you have to do? You have to do something. You have to work. You have to do some kind of work. And no matter how much you pursue that work and how much you work at that work and you try to make that work satisfy your needs, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Why? Because we all jump on this thing we call a hamster wheel at the beginning of our lives, and everything about life is redundant, mundane, monotonous. And we're always chasing something that's going to bring a little bit of spark or a little bit of happiness. Little quiz. How many of you will get up? This is not for the 17 and under because it's summer. But how many of you get tomorrow and go to work? Alarm's going to go off at the same time you usually set it, most of us, right? We're going to get up. We're going to down a cup of coffee, maybe eat some breakfast. Somewhere around midday, we'll grab a couple of friends. We'll go eat some lunch. We'll come back home after work is over with around 5 or 6. Work through traffic, get home, get our TV, and for like our dinner, and for most Americans, we will plop down in front of the TV, enjoy dinner, spend the night watching the TV, and go to bed and get up on Tuesday morning and go do the same thing. And that's kind of the description, at least of the American way of life. Now, what do? We try to find ways to break that monotony, right? Take a vacation, grab some friends and go watch a ball game, get some friends together to grill out and do a movie. But at its core, in a very general sense, life is this very routine thing that goes on and on and on. And as the scripture here just said, at the end of it, it seems futile. I believe that Solomon is the original one who said, I've never seen a hearse that was followed by a U-Haul. You can't take it with you. So go and accumulate all that you want to. Work your fingers to the bone. Make all the investments you have to. Study the stock market. Study the latest trends. Buy the crypto. Do whatever you want to do. But at the end of the day, guess what? You're taking zero with you. No matter how much you own, no matter how much you fought, no matter how much you've been promoted in life, you're going to wind up in the same place. She does, he does, they do. And this is the message that keeps resonating through this thing. Going on to verse 4, it says, a generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. Have you ever been one of those? And I was. Have you ever been one of those growing up who said, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to make a difference? Right? I'm going to change the world. I'm going to do something fantastic. They will remember me forever. But I'm going to do something to change the world. And guess what? We live, we die, and the world goes on the same. And I hate to break the news to you. Some of you may be aware. But you will die, all of you. There will be a sweet funeral, a sweet memorial service, and the next day, the rest of us will be hitting our alarm again so we can start the mundane all over again. Nothing will have changed. It's all the same. The earth continues to go. So he begins by picking out three natural illustrations to kind of demonstrate what he's talking about. The first one in verse 5, he says, the sun rises, the sun sets, panting, it hurries back to the place where it rises. The imagery there is the sun's kind of like a runner who can't find the finish line. He just keeps running and running and running and running, and it's always this routine, the same cycle. The next one, he says, gusting to the south, turning to the north, turning, everything turn. By the way, how many of you knew that was not a Beatles song? Oh, that's better than the first service. One lady said, it's Peter, Paul, and Mary. I was like, no, those are all from the Bible. It's actually Peter Seeger and the Byrds wrote that song. They stole Solomon's words and they put turn to it, made $1 million off of it, right? Some of you young people are going, what are you talking about? Who are these people? Next analogy, and this one to me is the most powerful. He says, all the streams flow to the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. Gallons and gallons and gallons of water filling up the ocean, and yet it never overflows. And the truth is, despite what they say, the water levels never rise. They may momentarily, they may cyclically, seasonally, but the ocean never overflows. After all that water pouring in, it still stays the same. Verse 8, he says, all things are wearisome, more than anyone can say. The eye is not satisfied by seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. What he literally is saying here is that you cannot say enough, you can't see enough, you can't hear enough to break this redundancy. It's always going to be there. No matter how hard you try, no matter what you do. And what happens is we fall into this trap as human beings where we just think we're going to be the exception. If I can just get that next promotion, just wait until my kids are born, things will be different. Wait till the kids graduate and get out of the house, things will be better. Wait till me and my wife retire, we'll be able to do what we want to do. Wait till something else happens. It's pretty much the description of what Job's friends were trying to tell him, right? If only this were happening, then you'd be better off. And nothing about it ever changes. Now, listen, not all of that is bad. Not all of that is bad. Some of the things that we pursue are good. Family are good. Having a good career is great. Pursuing excellence in your work, that's awesome. But here's the thing I want you to hear first and foremost. You see, anytime a good thing becomes a God thing, it becomes a bad thing. Anytime a good thing becomes a God thing, it becomes a bad thing. And so what happens is we have this real bad tendency as human beings, maybe because we can touch it, we can feel it, we can see it. We get blessed with a family, and the Bible says that children are a blessing from the Lord, right? And we get that blessing and we go, that's so awesome. And we turn our attention away from the God who gave us the kids and start turning our attention to the kids and worshiping the kids. And some of you are going, oh, come on, Ridley, I don't worship my kids. There's no way I worship my kids. And yet we rearrange our lives and we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars giving them everything they need, they want, desire, blah, blah, blah. I know parents who are living without because they're spending so much money on their kids. We become, in essence, like little children at Christmas who open 100 Christmas presents on the floor and never once look at their parents and go, thank you. Because, see, the good things become the God things. We try to worship the things that we have, the things that we own. And again, you're going, wait a minute, I would never worship my car. I would never worship my house. But my question for you is, do you have a real understanding of what idolatry is? Because idolatry is anything or any person who takes the place that only God should have in your life. Anything. And so when you start pursuing your American dream, which, by the way, is idolatry, we herald it, we applaud it, we pursue it, we love it, we encourage people in it. But what we're saying is, forget God, go find what you want. I can tell this is really making a lot of y'all happy right now. But this is the truth. You and I chose to follow God not because we were American. We chose to follow God because we believed He is the one true God, right? By the way, God isn't an American. He's not even patriotic. He doesn't care about the red, white, and blue, the green, yellow, and black. He doesn't care about any of it. He cares about His glory alone. And He will not share it with anything else. So, the writer in Ecclesiastes says, all things are wearisome, more than anyone say. The eye is not satisfied. Go on to verse 9. He says, what has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. A lot of times I have young guys that will call me in ministry who are friends of mine, and they'll go, hey, do you mind? I heard your sermon the other day. I watched it on YouTube or whatever. Really great point. Do you mind if I use that? I'm like, sure, because it's not mine. They're like, did you steal it from somebody? I'm like, no. I just know that I'm not the first person who had a bright idea. And so 99.5% of what I say can be accredited to somebody else, and the other 0.5% I just haven't found the person to credit to. I mean, think about it. Everything in the world has been said, it's been done, it's been tried, maybe not with the technology we have, but at some point somebody's pursued something the same way I have. They've said the same thing you and I have. We fool ourselves when we think we're going to be the one that comes up with the next new bag of tricks. We deceive ourselves into believing that we're going to do the one thing that's going to change the world. And we're seeking fulfillment. We're seeking satisfaction. We're seeking a break in the cycle. Verse 10, he says, can one say about anything, look, this is new, it has already existed in the ages before us. Verse 11, there is no remembrance of those who came before, and of those who will come after. There will also be no remembrance by those who follow them. I don't know about you, but as a kid, I had my dreams, right? By this time, I want to be doing this. By this stage, I want to be accomplishing this. By this point, I want to be there. In case you're wondering, I thought by 55 years old, I would be managing a baseball team in Major League Baseball. I would have completed my successful seasons as a third baseman for the Atlanta Braves, and they would have invited me back to be a coach, not at the Chapel Hill Youth Baseball League, but somewhere in the Atlanta baseball system. Close enough. For those who are concerned, Atlanta Braves have no clue who I am. So I will not be called next week and pulled up. Nothing about what I dreamed about my life has come true. I mean, I never dreamed I'd bury a wife and a son. I never dreamed I'd be living in Chapel Hill, Tennessee. I never pictured standing at my dad's bedside watching him die the way I did. Never thought there would ever come a time when I'd sit in front of my mother, she'd look at me and go, "Who are you?" But this is the life we're given under the sun. Years ago, Country Hall of Fame artist Reba McEntire came out with a song. It was a part of her actual TV show that was also known as Reba. I think it expresses very clearly some of the feelings that some of us have, some of the questions we have. It says this: she married when she was 20. She thought she was ready. Now she's not so sure. She thought she'd done some living, but now she's just wondering what she's living for. Now she's feeling that there's something more. She's always lived for tomorrow. She's never learned how to live for today. She's dying to try something foolish, do something crazy, or just get away. Something for herself for a change. There's a place in the sun that she's never been where life is fair and time is a friend. Would she do it the same as she did back then? She looks out the window and she wonders again. And the words to the chorus say this: is there life out there? So much she hasn't done. Is there life beyond her family and her home? She's done what she should. Should she do what she dares? She doesn't want to leave. She's just wondering, is there a life out there? For many of you in this room, including myself, there have been moments where you wonder if you're just rearranging the pieces of the puzzle over and over again and never getting a clear picture. It just doesn't seem to make any sense. It doesn't seem to have any purpose, any fulfillment to it. Alistair Begg once said, "We put a man on the moon, but there was nothing for him to do when he got there except for stare back at the earth." I've done hundreds of funerals in the course of my life. Least favorite thing to do. But inevitably, regardless of the situation, as you do those funerals, at some point, whether it's a part of the ceremony, the graveside, or even just in a private conversation, somebody will make the comment, "She made the world a better place." And Solomon would say, absolute nonsense. None of us change anything. Now, don't misunderstand me. Spending a few extra hours with someone who's lost a loved one changes things for a few moments. Baking a meal to someone who's gone through a tragedy, yeah, it makes a difference. Going on one of these mission journeys, it will change somebody momentarily. But when it's all said and done, when life is all over with, and you become nothing but a memory, nothing will have changed. The hamster wheel will continue to move. Why do we think we can cheat death? I mean, we all do, right? All of us have bought the latest collagen product or vitamin product or joined the gym or dyed our hair or whatever it is that makes us think that somehow we can beat death. We will be the one. But here is the surprising, shocking revelation for all of us. 100% of us will die. And 100% of us will face the judgment. Now, there is one exception, and I'll come back to him in just a minute. Because there are three different places here, that are three different illustrations that he uses to talk about the disturbing nature of life. Number one, he says, the march of time. No matter what you do, you can't slow it down, you can't stop it. How many of you as parents have gone, where did the time go? Where did my kid graduated this week from kindergarten? Which, by the way, there were no graduation of kindergartens when I was a kid. I missed out on something. Yeah, it just keeps going. There's nothing you do to slow it down, nothing you do to stop it. Kansas, the group from the 70s and 80s said, all we are is dust in the wind. And now you won't be able to get that song out of your head the rest of the sermon. The second thing he talks about is this: we will all die. The same fate awaits us all. You will die, you will die, you will die. I will die. There's nothing we can do to prevent it. And thirdly, he talks about the randomness of life. Remember, I told you the difference between him and the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs says that there is a cause and a circumstance for everything. If you do this, this will happen. If you do this, you can expect this probably will happen. Those are the ways that the book of Proverbs are dealing with life. That's their perspective on life. However, Ecclesiastes, the teacher says, time and chance means we have no control of anything, and we fool ourselves if we think we do. We fool ourselves if we think we do. Now, before you give up and say, I am canceling my visitation at Grove Hill for the rest of the summer, this is depressing, I'm ready to go sail a boat somewhere. This passage is not a contradiction to the gospel at all. It's not. What the teacher is saying to us, what Solomon is writing about, is the reality that the world is in bondage. Humanity has no way to explain it. There is no satisfaction to be found in it, and all of it is hevel. Unless you know the one who cheated death. Unless you know the one who brings meaning to it all. The one who said, if you live in me and find me and serve me and follow me and trust me, you'll find life more abundant than you ever thought possible. This world won't make much more sense. We still can't figure out what a bumblebee is. But what we will know is that when it all comes to an end, it ends at the feet of Jesus. And there we find our purpose. There we find our meaning. So the choice for you today is this: hevel or heaven? Death or the one who cheated death? Futility or purpose? Will you pray with me? Lord, I thank you for the wisdom and the words of Solomon. I feel like he sat in his throne room many nights, maybe even by himself, and he asked many of the questions he's asking right here in these passages. Questions that most of us in this room can relate to. Maybe even some of us were thinking them just last night. Maybe just this morning. What is the purpose in it all? Where do I find meaning? For those of us who are Christ followers in this room, I pray that it's probably shaken us just a little bit and helped us to realize that we can have purpose when we put God back in the place He's already claimed over our lives. Put Him back in the throne room. Put Him back in the place of authority. And quit trying to compromise and seek other things. But in a room this size, there may be somebody here who's going, you know what? This sermon was exactly what I've been feeling for the last 6 years of my life, the last 10 years of my life. It's what I've been feeling every day since my husband died, since my wife walked out, since my kids rebelled against us and left. It's what I've been feeling all of my life. There has to be something more. And maybe, just maybe, Solomon has it for us. In this relationship with the living God. So this morning, if there's somebody who needs to know Jesus Christ, God, would you give them the courage, the strength, the wisdom, see that this is the route they need? This is what they're looking for. This is the place they need to come. Thank you for giving us these words of wisdom for us. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Years ago in the 1990s, there was a brand that came out called No Fear. Y'all remember those t-shirts and everything? One of the favorite ones for me was the one that said, "He who dies with the most toys still dies." It's the truth. I love you, but you won't be here forever. And I'm thankful for every single one of you. I don't want to see you live in futility. I don't want to see you keep chasing your tail thinking at some point you'll find the answer to this life, because it's not out there. It's right here. Found in this book, displayed in the Son, Jesus Christ, given to us as clearly as the nose on our face. So why would you choose anything else but the one who's cheated you? As we sing this morning, if God's leading you, come and pray. I encourage you, please do. We'll hold the service as long as we need to. If you need to come and talk with me or one of our other counselors, I'd be happy to get you connected. You got questions, happy to deal with those questions. I just don't want to see you get to the end of your life and go, man, it's all been me.